This is the simplest and easiest iron farm on Minecraft Bedrock Edition, and you can build it anywhere that you want, including in a village, so that you don't have to worry about breeding or moving villagers. You can build this iron farm directly into the ground, meaning it only takes a couple stacks of blocks and hardly any time to build, and you can also add an optional villager trading hall underneath it as well. This simple and easy iron farm with an optional villager trading hall is a great way to start your new Minecraft worlds or upgrade your existing ones. And let's check out this iron farm. As you can see, you can build it directly into the ground, and we're also in the middle of a village, so it's really easy to put your villagers in here. It's basically just a little bit of water with some blocks and leaves on the edges, and then all of your iron golems die in the middle there, as you saw. Now, if we jump down below here, we have some item collection, and as you can see, you're going to get a fair amount of iron, along with string and poppies. This iron farm is fairly efficient. It's going to get you about 330 to 350 iron per hour, and of course, all this stuff from your cats. You can also turn this into a villager trading hall, so if we go down below, you can add basically as many villagers as you want down here. If you have the smithing type of villagers, then of course, you can also trade your iron to them for emeralds, and this is actually a pretty great source of emeralds and early game experience. So my trading hall is really ugly, but of course you can make this pretty, or you can keep it pretty ugly. And of course, you don't need to build this anywhere near a village. You can have it anywhere in the world that you want, including over an ocean, or you can even build it floating up in the air as long as you build a floor for it. So as you can see, there's several ways to customize this build, and there's also several ways to increase efficiency. You need at least 10 villagers just to get the iron farm going, but if you give it 20 villagers, then that's actually going to increase the rates a little bit. So I'd highly recommend that you give it 20 villagers, that way you get the better rates, but you might need to set up a villager breeder for this. One more thing, you might be familiar with previous Bedrock Edition iron farms where there's 2 spawning layers. However, those aren't necessary anymore because iron golems can only spawn on 1 floor, and that's why all the modern Bedrock Edition iron farms only have a single spawning platform. This reduces the number of spawning spots, so our rates are slightly lower. Honestly, it's still pretty good. I mean, look at it. This thing's just going. If you're familiar with other iron farms, then you might notice that our beds are stacked up in the middle and they look all weird, but this is so that you don't need to spawn proof the area. So the golems spawn in a certain range around the beds, and by stacking them up, they're only going to spawn within this farm. So you don't need to spawn proof anything outside the farm or anything under it. They're only ever going to spawn right inside of here. And keep in mind, on Bedrock Edition, you do not need zombies in your iron farm. They don't do anything at all on Bedrock Edition. That is only for Java, so completely ignore them. And yes, you can build this farm even with fire spreads turned on, because signs are not flammable on Bedrock Edition. As you can see, we have fire spreads turned on, and the random tick speed's really high, just to demonstrate that it's not going to burn down. And keep in mind, if you build this over a river or an ocean, you're going to get a ton more stuff spawning in here, like squid, fish, and drowns, so you're going to get a lot more drops. If you're looking for something a little bit more advanced, there's also my 5-in-1 iron farm, which is an iron farm, villager trading hall, crop farm, and a villager breeder all in one. So check that out. Links are everywhere. If you'd like this kind of tutorial, then make sure you're subscribed. That way you don't miss future ones, but let's jump into it. So the first thing that you need to do is find a nice flat area. You can build this farm basically anywhere that you want, but if you're early game and don't have a lot of villagers, I'd recommend building this next to a village. Or if you have the blocks, you can just build up a regular floating farm and build it literally wherever you want. Now, the materials you're going to need for this build is everything in my inventory. So a campfire, hopper, a couple of chests. You're going to need at least 10 workstations, 10 signs, a couple of slabs, some lava, over a stack of blocks, and over a stack of leaves. You'll also need an infinite water source, so at least 1 water bucket. You need 20 beds and 10 to 20 villagers. You'll also want a lightning rod, some torches, and possibly some string. You can find this full materials list down in the description for your convenience. So just find yourself a nice flat area. The build is going to be a total of 19 blocks wide by 19 blocks long, so you want a fairly sizable location. Now find a nice suitable location, and we're going to dig down by 2 blocks. And now you want to pick a direction that you want your entrance to be. So I want my entrance to be on that side, so we're going to dig that way by another 2 blocks and place down ourselves a double chest for our temporary storage, a hopper going into the back of that, and then a campfire on top of it. Now go ahead and place 2 slabs above it like so, and we're also going to crouch and place another 2 signs on top of this campfire right here. By the way, if you want to build a floating iron farm that isn't built into the ground, you can do that just as easily. You're just going to need yourself a 17 wide by 17 long platform, and you can make these out of upper slabs. The rest of the tutorial is going to be the same from here on out, regardless of if you're building into the ground or building your own platform. And now we're going to place in our walls. So go to your center block and grab yourself some solid blocks. We're going to count out in every direction by 9 blocks. So this is 1 block right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Place in a block right there. That should be lined up with your center. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Again, that should be lined up with your center. And now just do that on the other two sides as well. And this is what it should look like once you have your 4 blocks in place. And now we're going to connect it together in one big square. So just place 8 blocks to either side of your center block. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And of course do that on all sides. And you should have one giant square going around. As you can see, it's basically just a giant square. And now we need to place leaves on top of all of these blocks to prevent iron golems from spawning on them. So as you can see, it's just a layer of leaves. And now once you have all that in place, we're going to place in a temporary block in each corner of the build. Before we install the beds, if you're building this near or inside a village, you should go around the village and remove all the beds and workstations. That way it doesn't mess up if your villager linking. Make sure you remove all of them, so check all the houses and check all the farmland. If you miss one of them, then that can cause you some linking issues later on, or you might have golems spawning where they shouldn't. You should also remove the bell. You should probably also round up the villagers at this point and maybe throw them in a hole or something, or just lock them inside their houses. Now to install the beds inside the farm, we need to build a temporary structure above our central signs. So place in a solid block there, and now we're going to build out a couple blocks to the left of it and to the right of it so that it is 5 blocks wide. Now place in an additional 6 blocks on the front side of it and 6 blocks on the back side of it, like so. We actually need to build up this exact platform by another layer, so make this 2 blocks tall going all the way around. And then on the third layer, we just need solid blocks in these areas. I know it's weird, but we just need this here to place in all of the beds. So again, this little structure should be right above your head height. As you can see, we can walk underneath it. So at the top layer of this, we're going to place in 4 beds on top of these blocks right here. And then we're going to remove these blocks and place in the beds going underneath it. So we need 3 beds on the front side, a bed on the right side, and then 3 beds on the back side, and finally 1 bed on the left side. There should be a total of 8 beds in this middle layer, and now we're going to go ahead and remove the blocks that are underneath all of these beds and do the same thing here. So 3 beds on the front, 1 bed on the right, and then 3 beds on the back side with 1 bed on the left. Now, it's very important that the pillows of the beds are facing the center. This will ensure that the iron golems spawn within the farm and not on the outside of it. So make sure all of your pillows are in the correct orientation. Once you have all the beds installed, you can just go ahead and break out all these blocks here on the bottom. While we're in the middle, we're going to go ahead and place in a solid block between all those middle beds right there, and then we're going to place in a sign on all sides of the middle sign right there, and then you're going to have to go up by a block, crouch, and place in signs directly on top of these ones on the edges here, so they're standing up just like so. This is simply to contain our lava source, and we'll install that at the final bit of the farm. Now to install the water of the farm, pick a corner, and you're going to need yourself a couple of water buckets. We're going to place in a water bucket here, and that's going to be an infinite water source in the middle. Make sure you do not place water sources right here next to your solid block in the corner, otherwise this entire thing will flood. So here and here should not have any water sources. Now you're just going to place 1 up on the corner and continue placing in water sources every other block. This will generate infinite sources along this whole edge for you. And again, don't place sources here or here. Place 1 up in the corner, and I think you get the idea. Just every other block going across the farm until you reach the edges of it when you place 1 up in the corner. Okay, so once you place in all the water, this is basically what it should look like. All the water should be flowing towards the center, and it should reach the very middle and stop at that sign right there. If you have grass, that's all going to die, and it's going to look pretty ugly. But again, you can replace this with a proper floor later on if you feel like it. Now that the water is all installed, you can go ahead and remove these temporary blocks that are underneath your corner water sources. And now it's time for the funnest part, installing all of your villagers. The first villager is incredibly important. He's going to be going in one of the corners of the build, and this is going to be the detection villager that's actually going to see all the beds and tell the rest of your villagers that, hey, there's enough beds there. So we're just going to build in ourselves a little leaf encasement. This is going to contain our villager, and leaves is a non-spawnable block, so you're not going to get iron golems or other mobs in here. So drop in any villager that you want. It doesn't matter what type they are. They can even be a nitwit, but don't use babies. Babies are kind of useless. This is the most important villager in your farm. If this guy dies, then everyone else might unlink from their beds and workstations. So never move this guy. Keep him in there and keep him safe. If you're not building next to or inside of a village and you need some more villagers, then check out my tutorial for a super simple villager breeder that'll give you all the villagers that you need for this build, and you can just use the beds of your iron farm as the beds of your villager breeder. Either way, you're going to need at least 10 adult villagers that are not nitwits for this farm to work, but ideally you want 20 adults, that way you get the best rates. Once you have your main villager installed, the rest of your villagers can actually go wherever you want. So you could install a villager trading hall along the sides of your farm, or you could put them underneath your farm. But if you don't want a villager trading hall, just go to one of the corners of your build and chuck like 10 villagers in this little hole right here. Again, don't use nitwits and don't use babies. So there's currently 10 villagers in this hole, and we're just going to go ahead and cover that up with a leaf block. If you're planning on installing 20 villagers without a villager trading hall, then go ahead and put 9 villagers in another hole. I'd put them in like this corner right here. Again, we need a total of 20 to get the best rates. So 9 in this hole, 10 in that one, and then your additional 1 villager right there. So now we need to link up our villagers to their workstations. This is always a bit random, but the easiest way to do it is just to place down a workstation, wait for that to get particles, and then look for the villager that gets green particles. So one of them over there got it. So we're gonna move this workstation over here, and as long as there's a block above them, they won't be able to get out. So just place that right there. That should link to that guy. And now you just need to keep on doing this until every villager has a workstation. So one of the villagers in this hole got it. So we're just going to place in a workstation right there. Wait for him to link to that. Might take a second. And now we can go ahead and do the next one. You can use any workstation that you want, but I would recommend something like a fletching table because they're really cheap and they're also a full block. So the villagers aren't going to glitch into them. Now, since we have up to 10 villagers in this hole, that means that you need 2 workstations to either side of them for a total of 8. And then the other 2 can just go in either of the corners. It doesn't really matter. They'll be able to reach them through the corners there. Once you start linking up your villagers to workstations, you're going to start getting some iron golems. So go into the middle and place in your lava source underneath that solid block and then remove that block. And there we go. We've gotten our first iron golem in the farm. You also need to dig a tunnel going down into your little collection area. So just break out some blocks and dig down a little staircase. And then you're going to dig straight towards your chest until you reach it. And this is all you need to access it. As you can see, you're going to get some iron pouring in here from all of your iron golems. Couple last minute notes, you should definitely put down a lightning rod in the area to avoid lightning catching your leaves on fire or from striking your villagers and turning them into witches. You should of course also light up this area, that way no hostile mobs can see your golems and try to fight them. And on the corners here, zombies might be able to hit your villagers like through there, so just go ahead and put down a bunch of leaves on those corners to prevent that from happening. Same thing with your villager that's up in these corners, you should protect it from all sides, so just continue boxing that guy in. And honestly, you should probably just put like a little fence around this area just to keep mobs away from it in general. If you're playing in a cold biome, then you might be having issues with your water freezing. Now, the easiest way to solve that is just to put a piece of string into each one of your water sources. That'll stop them from freezing. And you'll also want to put some string on top of your leaves to stop the snow buildup as well. If you don't have the string, then you can just raise up your walls by a block and just put down a ton of torches in here, and that'll stop your water from freezing and stop the snow buildup as well. If you want to have a bed in the area, but you don't want to mess up with your iron golem spawn, then you should put your bed down here at the bottom with the pillow close to that hopper, and this is where you can sleep. If you put your bed elsewhere, there's a chance that villagers might link to it, and you might get iron golem spawning there, and it's just a whole pain. And of course, you can also renovate this entire lower area and make it look very pretty, and if you want to, you can also have your villager trading hall down here. So just break into the wall, place down yourself a torch, and then you get yourself a trapdoor in there, push in yourself a villager with a minecart, and then the workstation just goes directly in front of them. This trapdoor is just to protect them from the zombies, and you can have up to 19 villagers down here as your villager trading hall, with the additional 1 villager up in the corner. And keep in mind, you can have your villagers wherever you want. You can have your villager trading hall on the outside edge, you can have it like in the ground down here. It just needs to be relatively close to this villager and to your beds. And of course, if you're building your villager trading hall on the outside, you should definitely put a wall around this thing and secure this area. If for any reason your iron farm isn't spawning golems after a couple minutes and you've set up all of your villagers with workstations, then check out my video on how to fix iron farms. That goes into all the details for troubleshooting that you'll need to know. A real quick rundown though for troubleshooting, you need at least 10 villagers and at least 20 beds. You cannot have more villagers than beds, and your villagers need to work. If they're not working, then you're not going to get iron golems. If you've built everything as shown and linked everything correctly, then you'll probably get iron golems within a couple minutes. If you like this tutorial, then subscribe so you don't miss future tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys down in the comments and in the next one.